Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. You call this a D-level ability. Chapter 51. Brother Shu Yi, please hold on tight. Fang Lao's steady voice came from the front. Even though a peak-level virtual beast stood in front of him, he remained calm and did not even panic. Then, the helicopter began to shake violently. But in front of this skilled butler, the helicopter still flew very steadily to the side and forward. Shu Yi grasped the armrest and looked out through the window. Ruan Rui spread his wings behind his back and turned into an afterimage, quickly passing by the plane and rushing forward. Ice King, you will die miserably here today. The night owl let out a harsh roar, and the sound waves surged like thunder. His huge body was flashing with jet black energy, and as his wings flickered, countless black energy sharp blades flew out overwhelmingly. Faced with this large-scale attack, it seems that helicopters will also be covered by it. Just when Shu Yi was a little nervous, Ruan Rui waved his right hand coldly and calmly. In an instant, densely packed ice blades appeared behind him. He pointed forward lightly, and these ice blades seemed to have navigation, hitting each sharp blade accurately. The impact of the black sharp blades and ice blades dissipated, and a continuous cloud of frost exploded in the air, but none of the attacks affected the speeding helicopter. Under the control of Fang Lao, the plane passed through the frosty air and flew sideways without losing any speed, trying to stay away from the earth-shattering battle in the sky. After a while, the two figures continued to shrink. Shu Yi's pupils shrank, and he saw an astonishing scene from the narrow window. Ruan Rui's ice wing flapped and turned into an afterimage, fighting with the night owl in the air. The violent black energy and the power of frost are constantly impacting, and every collision can create extremely brilliant energy fluctuations. From a distance, it looked like countless fireworks exploding from the sky, and the scene was quite grand. Is this the battle of Peak Realm Awakeners? Shu Yi's heart began to beat crazily, and an inexplicable luster flashed in his eyes. When he was in the restricted virtual realm, Ruan Rui killed Councilman number 17 with just one move. Although they were both at the peak level, the counselor was not able to make the Ice King Senior perform any powerful moves at all. But the peak-level virtual beast in front of him made Ruan Rui take action. Shu Yi finally came face to face with the power of the Peak Realm Awakener. The Peak Realm is already so powerful, so how terrifying will the Ridge Realm and Kunlun Realm above this be? Some conjectures flickered in his mind, and his heart was filled with ups and downs. The sound of the fierce battle was getting farther and farther away. Under Fang Lao's leadership, they finally got out of the combat range, and the fuselage became stable again. Are we just going to leave like this? Shu Yi looked out the window. In the dark night, he could only vaguely see two vague lights flickering one after another. Don't worry, Master, he won't lose. Mr. Fang responded calmly, I will follow the Master's order and send you safely to Longxia Academy. You trust him very much. Shu Yi looked at the elegant old man and raised his eyebrows slightly. Young Master, I've seen him grow up since he was a child. Mr. Fang smiled calmly, and some memories seemed to flash in his eyes. Since he said he would win, he will definitely win. I hope so. Shu Yi looked out the window again and murmured. Although it may take some detours, we should still be able to arrive at the academy at the scheduled time. Mr. Fang drove the helicopter smoothly and glanced at the instrument panel casually. The young master will find his own way to get to the academy after the battle. Us. Fang Lao's voice was interrupted by a shrill scream. Shu Yi turned around suddenly, his pupils narrowed. In the night, a black shadow turned into a strong wind and flew rapidly in their direction. You dare! Ruan Rui's roar sounded like thunder. Immediately, Shu Yi saw a huge ice spear with a thickness of 2 meters in midair, flying rapidly from a distance and thrusting into the black shadow. The black shadow spread its wings, revealing the night owl's cold appearance. The short battle had left scars all over its body. It stared straight ahead, but it already had a way to deal with the Ice King in its mind. Facing the huge ice spear, jet black energy emerged from his body, and his whole body tilted 90 degrees rapidly, passing by the ice spear. The ice spear rushed straight towards the helicopter with the force of breaking through the air. But half a meter away from the plane, the spearhead began to decompose, turning into a piece of ice and dissipating. At the same time, the afterimage of the night owl finally swooped over, grabbing the helicopter with its huge claws. I also want you to see how my compatriots died miserably in front of me. This guy wants to threaten Senior Ruan Rui with our lives. Shu Yi was shocked and immediately realized what the night owl wanted to do. Fang Lao also had a look of solemnity in his eyes, and he swung the operating lever vigorously, trying to twist and avoid Night Owl's grasp. But Yi Xiao's speed is so fast, no matter how hard he operates, he can't avoid it. Boom! The bird's claws grasped heavily on a layer of ice. Shu Yi looked out the window in surprise and saw a transparent ice barrier that was in a spherical shape, covering the helicopter inside. The bird's claws grabbed onto this layer of ice, and ice shards flew, but it failed to penetrate. An ice trail came quickly from the distance and suddenly stopped in midair. Ruan Rui's face was cold, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent and chill. You are looking for death. Without saying a word, he flapped his ice wings and turned into a stream of light that swooped towards the night owl. The cold air condensed in his hand, turning into an ice spear, and without saying a word, he thrust it at Yi Xiao. The night owl quickly flew back. Seeing that it was inevitable, he suddenly folded his wings in front of him. The ice spears were inserted into the wings, erupting into a buzzing sound of gold and iron fighting. The wings of this night owl are as hard as steel. With the blessing of the King of Night, I am invincible at night. Night Owl flapped its wings vigorously, and the violent airflow it produced forced Ruan Rui to retreat uncontrollably. He quickly flew backwards and caught up with the helicopter wrapped in an ice barrier in the blink of an eye. Its eyes flashed with a cunning luster, and it sneered and said, "And you have to distract yourself from protecting these two weak losers. What are you fighting with me for?" The bird's claws fell rapidly and hit the ice barrier hard. The solid ice suddenly spattered with ice chips, causing many cracks. Although the fuselage of the helicopter was not affected, the expressions of Shu Yi and Fang Lao in the cabin changed at this moment. Boom! Another roar came from above. A blow containing the energy of Yi Xiao's whole body completely shattered the ice barrier and scattered it from the air. Looking at the helicopter at his feet, Night Owl's eyes showed a cruel luster, and he grabbed his left paw in the direction of the cabin. Seeing the bird's claws enlarging continuously, Shu Yi's heart tightened rapidly. Phew! A few drops of blood floated out and hit the window. Under Fang Lao's control, the helicopter flew past Yi Xiao at an angle. Shu Yi looked through the window and saw Ruan Rui, who was blocking the side of the helicopter with his body and having his chest pierced by a bird's claw. You see, you humans are always like this, doing things that move you. A cheerful smile appeared on Night Owl's face, as if his plan had succeeded. He pulled out his right claw forcefully, and there was a piece of blood floating between the claws. You have to fight me again, and you have to be distracted from protecting those weak compatriots. This will only lead to you losing everything, Ice King. It laughed ferociously, and its laughter was full of joy. Are you referring to this painless attack? Ruan Rui said coldly, and a layer of ice began to appear on the wound on his chest. Under the influence of blood, this layer of ice flour quickly turned into a blood flower. He used this method to freeze the wound. His face paled slightly, but his eyes were still extremely cold. I promise, this time I will make your death ugly. Ruan Rui waved his palm, and a wave of ice and frost air seemed to rush out of his palm, covering the night owl. But Night Owl just flapped its wings and dodged while catching up with the helicopter. No matter what kind of creature it is, once its weakness is discovered, it will have half a foot in the abyss of hell. It grinned ferociously and groaned, black energy bursting out from its body, resisting the ice wave. Obviously, the two losers in this plane are your weaknesses, Ice King. He waved his paws and gestured towards the plane. Ruan Rui's eyes turned cold, but he could only helplessly control the ice wave, turning it into half a wall to resist the Night Owl's attack. Ha! Night Owl laughed, and two feathers flew out from his body. The feather cut through the night sky and instantly hit Ruan Rui's shoulder, piercing a bloody flower. Like this, Ruan Rui snorted, his eyes filled with anger. This A-level ability, the King of Night, has brought a huge increase in ability to this peak-level Night Owl. Whether it is energy, speed or destructive power, it is at least 3 times stronger than normal. In this late night, this is undoubtedly the most difficult ability to deal with. Afterwards, Night Owl began to attack the aircraft frantically. Every attack he made would be blocked by the ice wall formed by Ruan Rui, but Ruan Rui himself was also attacked by Night Owls one after another. Although he did not suffer any more fatal injuries in a short period of time, his face became increasingly pale. Hey, it's not going to be good if this goes on. Shu Yi's face changed slightly and he witnessed everything from the window. Mr. Fang, who had always been calm, now had an extremely solemn expression. We have become a burden to the young master. In order to protect us, the young master can only use 50% of his strength. 50%? Why is the restriction so big? Shu Yi's heart skipped a beat, and he couldn't understand. Protecting is more than 3 times as difficult as attacking. Mr. Fang replied solemnly, didn't you notice? From the beginning, we have been surrounded by the young master's energy. The loss of these energy will seriously drag down his combat effectiveness, and will also keep him distracted. Under Fang Lao's reminder, Shu Yi looked outside carefully, and then he could vaguely sense it. At this moment, countless tiny ice shards were scattered around the plane, constantly moving with the plane. It is precisely because of the existence of these ice chips that every attack of Night Owl can be stopped by Ruan Rui in time. After consuming so much energy and being distracted, he was still able to fight to an even tie with this Night Owl. Shu Yi was secretly shocked and looked at the expressionless Ruan Rui from the window. While protecting the aircraft, he also resisted the sneak attack of the Night Owl. Under such circumstances, this senior Ice King could even find time to attack Yi Xiao. In terms of strength alone, even with the blessing of the Night King, Yi Xiao is definitely no match for Ruan Rui. But it was insidious and cunning, and in this way, it firmly restricted Ruan Rui. In just over 10 minutes of fighting, the energy fluctuations in Ruan Rui's body had obviously declined by a few points, and the energy consumption was huge. If the attack continues like this, even if Yi Xiao can be killed, Senior Ruan Rui will definitely be severely injured. Shu Yi's expression was solemn, and he had almost seen the ending. If it weren't for protecting them, Ruan Rui wouldn't have to fight such a frustrating battle. Mr. Fang, let me ask you. Shu Yi no longer hesitated. He put his head forward and asked very quickly, if you give up protecting us, how sure is Senior Ruan Rui of killing Yi Xiao? 10%. With the young master's strength, if you are not distracted, it will be easy to kill this void beast. Fang Lao replied solemnly. All he can do now is trust the young master and try to keep the plane away from the Night Owl. Very good, I understand. Shu Yi retracted his head, with a determined look in his eyes, and kicked open the cabin door, clasped the armrest with his hand, and stuck his head out. Boom! The huge bird claw fell at exactly this moment, and a wall of ice suddenly appeared in front of Shu Yi, blocking the blow. What are you doing? Come back here! Ruan Rui shouted loudly, scolding Shu Yi. But Shu Yi didn't care. His hair was pulled by the strong wind and kept flying outwards, but his eyes were extremely solemn. He channeled his energy and shouted loudly against the wind, Senior Ruan Rui, stop protecting the plane. Use all your strength to kill this strange bird. Noisy ants. A cold light flashed in Yi Xiao's eyes, and 2 black lights fell rapidly, trying to kill Shu Yi. But a piece of ice appeared above Shu Yi's head again, blocking the 2 attacks. Go back to me quickly. I will naturally kill this beast. Ruan Rui looked cold and ignored Shu Yi's cry. I'm not kidding you, I can protect this plane. You just need to let go of the fight and use all your strength to kill this strange bird. Just when Ruan Rui frowned and wanted to scold him back, he saw the look in Shu Yi's eyes. Believe me, Shu Yi didn't talk nonsense. He just shouted these 3 words loudly and looked directly at Ruan Rui across the night. Ruan Rui was slightly startled, and saw a touch of confidence and determination in this young man's eyes. Shu Yi finished shouting and got back into the plane. He punched hard and smashed the glass next to him. His expression became extremely calm at this moment, and the expression on his face gradually disappeared. Mr. Fang, follow my command later. From now on, we have to protect ourselves. Very good. Ruan Rui refocused his eyes on the front and murmured. Although he thought this request was ridiculous, Shu Yi's look gave him an inexplicable sense of trust. He didn't know why he believed the words of a Stone Realm kid. But a crazy feeling surged from his heart. He waved his hand, and all the ice chips scattered around the helicopter disappeared. After the protection was gone, the abundant energy began to surge wildly in his body, and a compelling chill burst out from his cold eyes. I believe you just this once. He looked at the Night Owl from a distance, stretched out his right hand, and said coldly, "Beast, are you ready to face your death?" Ha! Yi Xiao looked at Ruan Rui with a mocking expression and laughed loudly, "Is my death day coming? Do you know who you are talking to?" He roared out waves of sound, and the feathers on his back turned into black light that shot toward Ruan Rui. However, this time, Ruan Rui, who put all his attention into the battle, looked indifferent and waved his right fist forward. Wow! A piece of cold air spread out, freezing the night sky and freezing the feathers all over the sky. At this moment, there seemed to be a Milky Way transformed by cold air above the sky. Frost Fist. Ruan Rui groaned softly. Yi Xiao's eyes widened, he arched his body and flew into the air. In its abdomen, a fist condensed with ice rose into the sky, knocking its huge body away, and condensed pieces of frost, freezing its chest and abdomen. After giving up the distraction protection, he finally showed his true strength. "You are looking for death." Yi Xiao roared and shattered his fists with energy, his body trembling, but his eyes were extremely cold. From his body, two jet black energies shot out rapidly. A beam of energy rushed straight towards Ruan Rui. And another beam of energy twisted in the air and shot towards the helicopter. It wanted to repeat the same trick and once again use the helicopter as a threat, forcing Ruan Rui to concentrate on returning to defense. "Tilt the fuselage to the far left." Shu Yi saw the energy flying through the window and immediately shouted loudly without saying a word. Mr. Fang was already ready to go. Almost at the same time he gave the order, he pulled the joystick to the left. The helicopter's body suddenly tilted rapidly and flew towards the left. However, with this twisting speed, it was impossible to avoid the impact of that energy. Shu Yi's eyes flickered, and he threw the half-piece of glass in his hand towards the broken window. A white thread stretched out from the glass fragments and connected to the broken window of the plane. Under the traction of this silk thread, the helicopter seemed to be pulled hard by a rope. Its speed surged, it directly accelerated, tilted and deflected, and flew towards the left. Boom! The energy impact from the laser grazed the chassis of the aircraft. The hard shell of the plane shattered instantly, revealing a large hole. But it also successfully dodged this attack. The broken glass spun upside down and fell back onto the broken window. But before it could be repaired, Shu Yi recaptured it. His face paled slightly, and he muttered softly, "It consumes more energy than I thought." Forcibly using the repairman's hand to move the entire aircraft, 70% of his energy disappeared. "The next step is up to you, Senior Ice King." "What?" Yi Xiao turned his head in disbelief. The picture he imagined did not happen. Ruan Rui was not distracted to block his attack. And that plane was not shot down by him. "Hey, beast." The rapid drop in temperature made Yi Xiao tremble all over. Ruan Rui's voice was actually only 2 meters away from him at this moment. "Where are you looking?" Ruan Rui flew towards him and punched Yi Xiao on the head, sending it flying downwards. There was a raging fighting spirit in his eyes, and he finally breathed a sigh of relief. "That kid really did it. Then I will make a quick decision." Night Owl flapped its wings, using all its strength to counteract Ruan Rui's momentum. Just as he barely managed to stabilize his body, his pupils narrowed rapidly. In the sky, a small mountain-sized piece of ice was seen falling down like a meteorite. Icefall. The ice meteorite fell rapidly and hit Yi Xiao's body with a crash. It let out a shrill scream, and its back suddenly became bloody. But before the blood could disperse, it was frozen by the cold air, and half of his body was shrouded in frost. Ice King. Anger drove Night Owl to roar unwillingly, and his energy surged at this moment. Black energy enveloped his wings and began to tremble rapidly. From its mouth, a beam of energy shot out, blasting the meteorite into pieces. It flew up again and rushed into the air. Ruan Rui's ice wings rolled and he also dived towards the Night Owl. The eyes of both sides were filled with extreme murderous intent, and the energy fluctuations from the peak realm continued to collide in the air, exploding the clouds. At this moment, they launched their decisive blow without reservation, just to completely defeat the person in front of them. Yi Xiao. The energy in the Night Owl quickly enveloped its entire body, as if it was covered with a layer of gauze. Its speed unexpectedly surged again on this basis, erupting into even more powerful fluctuations. Ice God. Ruan Rui's pale white hair fluttered in the wind, and ice mist spread all over his body. This ice energy condensed and never dispersed, actually forming a half-giant body behind him. The giant has only half a body, and its entire body is made of ice. It is about 3 meters tall. It is not angry and powerful, but its face is exactly the same as Ruan Rui. The thick hands, maintaining the same posture as Ruan Rui, rushed downwards. At this moment, he was like a god descending from the sky, full of killing intent. Boom! One person and one beast, all wrapped in blazing energy, collided with each other. The black energy and the cold air rising into the sky seemed to split the sky into 2 halves. However, this impact only lasted less than half a second before the cold air swept away, completely covering Yi Xiao. Just as Mr. Fang said, Ruan Rui, fighting with all his strength, possesses an absolutely crushing combat power. The ice god behind him grabbed the night owl's right wing with both hands and pulled hard, tearing off the wings of the virtual beast. Blood rain poured down from the sky. Impossible, impossible. Night Owl looked like he was going crazy, and the pain spread all over his body. He could not accept the situation in front of him. I am invincible at night. I am the king of the night. I can't lose. It doesn't matter if you are the king of night or the king of sun. Ruan Rui was covered in blood at the moment and casually threw out the broken wings in his hand. If you dare to stand in front of me, even a god will kill you. The giant ice fist fell with a crash, and Yi Xiao couldn't avoid it. He was directly pierced through the chest, and a huge blood hole appeared in his chest. I told you, it will make your death ugly. Ruan Rui's eyes were cold, and with the huge ice fist as the center, circles of frost spread out, about to freeze the night owl again. That bastard, if it wasn't for him, how could I have lost? Yi Xiao looked up at the sky with ferocious eyes, his eyes pointed directly at the trembling and shaking helicopter, his eyes filled with hatred. For His Majesty King Shu. It let out a final roar, and its entire body seemed to be boiling, and its energy surged crazily. You want to blow yourself up. Ruan Rui didn't expect that this virtual beast would want to blow himself up. His expression suddenly changed, and the ice god behind him immediately stretched out 2 giant hands and held Yi Xiao firmly in his palms. Boom! The terrifying energy impact shattered the ice god's arms. Even Ruan Rui's body was knocked away by the impact and fell towards the ground. At the moment when the night owl exploded, a black feather flew out from its body and rushed towards the helicopter high in the sky. It looks like it's over. Frost covered the sky, and Shu Yi used the broken window to see Ruan Rui's crushing victory. He let out a relaxed breath, and just as he was about to repair the window, terrifying energy fluctuations came from below. What is that? Shu Yi's pupils tightened, but he saw a black light tear through the night and hit the side of the plane's fuselage instantly. Boom! The plane roared like it was hit hard. The next moment, the entire fuselage began to shake rapidly, flying forward for several meters with inertia, and then began to fall rapidly towards the ground. What happened? Shu Yi grabbed the chair hard and asked loudly. At this moment, the plane was shaking and falling very fast, and the clouds were passing by quickly. Mr. Fang didn't seem to expect that the plane would be in such a situation. He pulled the joystick hard and operated on the instrument panel for a while, then his face changed in shock and he shouted loudly, "Propeller, the propeller is malfunctioning." For helicopters, propellers are almost the driving force for them to stay high in the sky. The black light came straight towards the plane and blasted right through the propeller. Hey, isn't it? Shu Yi's face turned a little pale. Looking at the white clouds rising rapidly on both sides, his heart trembled slightly. I thought that Senior Ice King had successfully killed the night owl, but I didn't expect that such an accident would happen at this time. The plane was spinning and falling, and Shu immediately gave up the idea of parachuting. Skydiving under such circumstances is no different from seeking death. Does this mean this is the only way left? He gritted his teeth and moved closer to the cabin door, placed his palm firmly on the roof of the cabin, and activated the repair hand. White light quickly enveloped the entire aircraft. Under Shu Yi's energy operation, the propeller, which had been almost scrapped, was immediately repaired under the energy operation. However, the previous involvement of the entire plane had consumed 70% of his energy. Now that he was forcibly using energy to repair the aircraft, the little energy left in his body began to be consumed rapidly. Call out. The white light retreated like a tide, and Shu Yi collapsed on the chair exhausted. Did it succeed? His ability was forcibly interrupted due to exhaustion of energy, and he was not sure whether the propeller was repaired. I'm trying. Mr. Fang still remained calm in such a dangerous situation, pulled the joystick hard, and began to try to restart the propeller. However, the helicopter continued to spin and fall, and the speed was getting faster and faster. The propeller didn't move at all, and the repair didn't appear to be complete. Move it, move it. Seeing that the propeller still couldn't run, Mr. Fang clenched his fists and roared. Shu Yi's face turned pale and he was very anxious. Is it going to stop here? He waved his fist angrily and hit the chair hard, somewhat unwillingly. But at this moment, a wisp of mist flew out from Shu Yi's waist and poured into his body. For some reason, strands of white silk threads flew out of his body again and spread to the top of the machine, but they only lasted for a second and then quickly dissipated. Click, click, click. Above the top of the machine, there was the sound of fan blades turning. Although very weak, this also means that the propeller successfully completed the start. Mr. Fang. Shu Yi's eyes lit up, and he shouted loudly without having time to think about what happened. I'm already doing it. Fang Lao looked excited and quickly pulled the control stick towards him, trying to stabilize the aircraft again. However, starting the propeller also takes time. Although the fan blades had begun to change from slow to fast, they were unable to stop the helicopter falling at high speed. Under Fang Lao's control, the originally rotating fuselage finally stopped rotating, but its downward trend still did not ease at all. Through the window, Shu Yi even saw the ground under the moonlight. There seemed to be a wasteland on the outskirts of Jincheng below. The surrounding area was extremely desolate, with not even a village. Falling at this speed, there is only one ending. That is the destruction of the machine and the death of people. Click, click, click. The propellers rotated faster and faster, and although the falling speed of the fuselage slowed down, it still fell with an unstoppable momentum. 300 meters, 200 meters, 100 meters. The ground was clearly visible, and it seemed that everything was too late. But at this moment, boom, the falling fuselage seemed to have hit something, and its speed suddenly froze for a moment. Through the window, Shu Yi could only see continuous sheets of ice fog filling the bottom of the helicopter. Ha, he lay back on the seat exhaustedly and finally relaxed. It seems we are saved. Bang 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 bang. 6 consecutive streaks of ice mist dispersed at intervals, as if forming a buffer zone, forcibly slowing down the falling fuselage. Under this buffer, the propeller was finally able to move the plane, and the feeling of weightlessness also dissipated for a few minutes. At the same time, the helicopter finally approached the ground. Boom, the dust was flying, and in this series of buffers, the plane finally landed on the ground. Although this method of emergency landing was extremely dangerous, Shu Yi and Fang Lao in the plane were not harmed in any way. Gee, bang, a sound came from outside the fuselage, followed by a layer of black smoke. Mr. Fang also seemed to relax, leaning on the chair, his back already soaked with sweat. Half a minute later, Shu Yi and Fang Lao stepped off the plane. The night wind blew and a figure fell from the air. At this moment, Ruan Rui was in a desperate state. The clothes on his body were torn, and only one of the pair of ice wings on his back was left, which had already become tattered. Just behind him, the frost giant's arms were shattered, and his body was covered with cracks. As he moved forward, the entire giant turned into ice fragments and scattered in the sky. There was a slight weakness in his eyes, but after seeing Shu Yi and Fang Lao who were intact, a smile appeared on his usually expressionless face. The night wind blew his short white hair, and under the moonlight, his pupils reflected a light blue luster like sapphires. Well done. A smile flashed across his face, and he nodded towards Shu Yi to express his gratitude. Master, it seems that our plan is going to change. Mr. Fang's voice came from the side of the helicopter. He frowned and looked at the position where black smoke was rising from the fuselage. This is where the night owl's first attack hit. Inside the damaged shell was the helicopter's engine. The high-speed fall caused the engine to malfunction. There are no tools available now and it cannot be repaired in a short time. He turned to look at Shu Yi, with a hint of apology in his eyes. I'm sorry, maybe you can't take the entrance test this time. In this wilderness, there was no way to find any transportation to get to Longxia Academy. Shu Yi's expression was slightly frozen. He didn't think Longxia Academy would delay the entrance exam just for him. Taking a deep breath, he forced a smile and pretended to be calm. It doesn't matter, this kind of emergency. The entire responsibility this time lies with me. Ruan Rui said expressionlessly, interrupting Xu Yi. If it weren't for my mistake, that beast wouldn't have appeared here. Immediately he looked at Mr. Fang and asked, what time is it now? Mr. Fang glanced at his watch and responded quickly, 3:30 in the morning. Xu Yi's expression changed slightly. Even if the helicopter wasn't broken, it would still be nearly 3 hours away. In any case, it seems that he will not be able to make it in time for this entrance test. Although it may be a little later. A cold air rose from the ground, drawing Xu Yi's attention back. He turned around and saw that the wings of ice had once again condensed behind Ruan Rui. But I can assure you that you will definitely reach the academy before the entrance test. Hey, you don't mean to. Xu Yi's expression was frozen. The next moment, before he had time to react, Ruan Rui grabbed his clothes and flew into the sky. The two of them rushed high into the sky and disappeared into the sky very quickly. What? In the office, a teacher spoke in shock, looking at the short-haired middle-aged man wearing sunglasses in front of him in disbelief. You want to take over this entrance test? Do you have any questions, Teacher Kang Wei? The short-haired man smiled slightly and responded calmly. No, it's nothing. Kang Wei wiped the sweat from his forehead. It's just that I'm worried that if you take charge of the test, you won't be able to retain even half of the 120 students who took the entrance test this time. He looked at the man in front of him and murmured in his heart. This instructor Lien Shou, who is known as the Devil Instructor, and is almost retired, was asked by the principal to return to the school to take charge of the entrance examination in 9 days. Unexpectedly, he proposed to take over the entrance test at this time. A weird smile appeared on Lien Shou's face. Don't you think that the quality of students in the college has declined recently? Instead of wasting resources on some useless people, it is better to reduce the number of students enrolled and only recruit those who are qualified to become void hunters. Kang Wei became even more ashamed and couldn't help but said, our college only recruits about 100 people every year. The students who are able to take the test are the elite among the elite. Isn't it a little too much to call them trash? Teacher Kang Wei, you are so stupid. Lien Shou shook his head lightly, showing a disappointed expression. Haven't you noticed it yet? His gaze suddenly became sharp, like a sword ready to be fired, exuding a threatening aura. In the past 2 years, the virtual demon's actions have become more frequent. In the past few years, the number of virtual realms opened within the 5 countries has doubled, and the casualties of the virtual hunters have also increased. So shouldn't we expand enrollment and cultivate more elites? Kang Wei was very puzzled. And then let them die. Lien Shou interrupted him mercilessly. In my opinion, even if a person without strength becomes a hunter, he will die in vain. Kang Wei frowned and wanted to argue again. That's enough. An old voice suddenly interrupted the argument between the two. Principal Xia Wu looked solemn and stared at the two people in front of him. After a moment, he slowly spoke. Why did you two show up in my office? Silence fell for a few seconds. Lien Shou held his forehead and sighed. I have only left the college for 2 years, and principal, your amnesia is getting worse and worse. Kang Wei seemed to have been used to it for a long time. He quickly stepped forward and stated the intention of the two people here. I see. Xia Wu nodded and suddenly waved his hand. I agree. This time the entrance test will be left to instructor Lien Shou to take full responsibility. As for teacher Kang Wei, just be a teaching assistant and help instructor Lien Shou. I spent 3 days working on the test plan. Kang Wei wailed in his heart, but he could only respond in a deep voice, yes, principal. Lien Shou nodded towards the principal, turned around and walked out. I'll trouble you, teacher Kang Wei. It's half an hour until 8 o'clock. Let's gather at the testing site in advance. I don't like being late. Kang Wei shrugged and followed. Now that the principal has spoken, he naturally has nothing to question. I'm a little curious, instructor Lien Shou, how many students do you expect to let pass the test this time? Preliminary reservation. Lien Shou walked forward with a smile on his face. About 30 people. Longxia Academy is located on a vast plain. Dozens of students walked sporadically from all directions, heading towards the center of the plain. They came from all over the country, all received Dragon Jade, and rushed here to take the entrance test. Almost everyone had a smile on their face, and their expressions were full of confidence. They are the leaders among their peers. Whether it is their own abilities or comprehensive evaluation, they are far stronger than their peers. It is precisely because of this that they were able to obtain the Dragon Jade and go to the highest school of awakened people, Longxia Academy. As expected of Longxia Academy, any testing venue is this big. Someone exclaimed in the crowd and slowly stopped in front of the signboard with the 3 characters, testing ground. In order to avoid being late, they woke up early. Your name should be Tang Xiaowen. It's a really nice name. Not far away, a young man with a frivolous face and red hair was diligently surrounding the beautiful girl, his expression full of excitement. He had never seen such a beautiful beauty when he was in high school. If Shu was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that this girl was his former high school beauty, Tang Xiaowen. My name is Han Hao, and I have awakened S-level abilities. Isn't that awesome? The red-haired boy introduced himself proudly, not noticing Tang Xiaowen, who frowned slightly. Tang Xiaowen was not interested in the young man who suddenly came over to chat with her. Just as she was about to speak, 2 figures seemed to appear out of thin air and arrived in front of the sign in an instant. They wore light blue suits and coats, and the coats of arms on their shoulders clearly showed their identities. Hello, instructor. For a moment, the students present stopped talking, and most of them bowed politely. Not bad, there are so many punctual little guys. Lien Shou smiled slightly, turned over his hand and took out a pocket watch from his inner pocket. He ignored the greetings from the students beside him, just looked down at his pocket watch and stood silently. The other students immediately became a little nervous and came to stand in front of Lien Shou. Even if they communicated, they only dared to speak very quietly, for fear of angering the 2 instructors who were about to test them. Students came one after another and all gathered in front. Kang Wei looked around, looking at instructor Lien Shou standing motionless beside him, but his mind was filled with thoughts, wondering what kind of test this legendary devil instructor would prepare for these new students. Time passed by minute by second, and it was 7:58 in the blink of an eye. There are 2 minutes until 8 o'clock. The number of students gathered here has reached 117. According to the list, there are exactly 120 people expected to take the entrance test this time. Kang Wei thought to himself and looked ahead. There are still 3 people who have not shown up. Are you late, or? When the stopwatch pointer passed the 12 o'clock position again, Lien Shou raised his head slightly and briefly counted the number of people in front of him. 1 minute left. Suddenly there was a roar among the crowd. They looked not far away, and the girls exclaimed, covering their eyes with their hands and looking forward through their fingers. But far away on the road, I saw a burly man, at least 1.9 meters tall, with an ordinary slick haircut and a very strong physique, walking towards the crowd step by step. He was not wearing a shirt, and his angular chest and abdominal muscles were exposed, but his eyes were extremely wanton and wild. This is it, the freshman testing ground. He ignored everyone's gaze and went straight to the crowd. His voice was as dull as thunder. After a moment, a smile appeared on his lips. Hurry up and start, I can't wait. There are still 2 people who haven't arrived yet. Kang Wei's heart moved slightly and his eyes glanced at the stopwatch in Lien Shou's hand. It was now less than 5 seconds before 8 o'clock. It seems they are going to miss this test. He sighed softly, while Lien Shou beside him always smiled. It seems that the remaining 2 don't need to wait any longer. Lien Shou was about to close his pocket watch and put it away when his movements suddenly froze. He revealed a weird smile and looked up at the sky. This strange movement immediately caused the students present to look up. Soon, they were exclaiming again and again. A black spot continuously enlarged from high in the sky, seemingly pointing directly at where they were. Vaguely, they could even see 2 figures, one of whom had wings on his back. Whoosh! The figure fell to the ground like a meteorite. 1 second it was still in the air, and the next second it crashed into the middle of the plain. A cold wind carried the smoke and dust away. At the same time, the stopwatch of Lien Shou's pocket watch that had not yet been closed jumped to the 12 o'clock position. In the smoke and dust, an extremely cold voice slowly came, not 1 second more, not less every second. Looks like I've caught up. This shocking appearance from the sky directly shocked the more than 100 students present. Even if they were killed, they would never have imagined that someone would appear in such a way. Who is the person in the smoke and dust, and why can he fall from the sky? There were two people just now. Could it be that the other person, like them, is also a new student of Longxia Academy? Everyone looked at the billowing smoke. The cold wind blew by, and Ruan Rui's scarred body and the wings floating in the wind slowly appeared on his back, making the students' hearts skip a beat. His eyes were filled with deep exhaustion. First, he had a battle with Yi Xiao, and then he personally took Shu Yi on a rapid flight for 4.5 hours. Both his mental strength and the energy in his body were close to being exhausted. As the smoke completely dissipated, another figure gradually emerged behind him. Vomit. Shu Yi lay on the ground without any manners, retching heavily. The feeling of weightlessness caused by the rapid fall directly caused his chest to surge. If he hadn't eaten anything since last night, I must vomit out all the rice now. I wonder how someone could be so arrogant. Lian Shou put away his pocket watch and looked at Ruan Rui with a smile. It turns out it's you, a sullen boy. Long time no see, teacher Lian Shou. An indescribable sense of nervousness flashed across Ruan Rui's calm face at this moment. He twitched the corners of his mouth unnaturally and walked away into the distance without looking back. This student is this year's freshman. I have delivered him on time and left first. Then, he dragged his tired body and left quickly without stopping at all. Shu Yi also wiped his saliva and stood up from the ground. He looked at Ruan Rui's leaving figure, and for some reason, he felt that the senior Ice King was running very fast as if he was running for his life. More than 100 pairs of eyes were focused on him, filled with various expressions. There is shock, contempt, curiosity, surprise. All the freshmen were deeply impressed by Shu Yi's way of descending from the sky and kept looking at him back and forth. Tang Xiaowen among the crowd also had beautiful eyes flowing at this moment, looking at Shu Yi in surprise. He unexpectedly appeared here. Lian Shou withdrew his gaze from Ruan Rui's back and glanced at Shu Yi with amusement. Anyway, you arrived on time, please join the queue. Yes, instructor. After just a few seconds of observation, Shu Yi already understood the identity of the person in front of him. His pupils flickered, and he saw a familiar figure among the crowd. Quietly arriving at the end of the crowd, he stood casually and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Anyway, he finally caught up with the entrance test. You guys are so awesome. Shu Yi had just stood firm when a whisper came from beside him. Turning around, he saw a boy with pigtails giving him a thumbs up. He looked quite handsome, but his steps were frivolous, and his expression and movements made Shu Yi feel a strange feeling that was extremely inconsistent with his appearance. I'm Bai Dao, what do you call me, brother? Shu Yi. Shu Yi responded calmly, finally realizing where the strange feeling came from. The temperament exuded by this brother named Bai Dao can only be described in 4 words: evil eyebrows and rat eyes. Whether it's his movements or his erratic eyes, there is an invisible sense of obscenity. This temperament formed a great contrast with his delicate appearance. It feels like a little thief who has been doing bad things for many years and is always on guard against the police. Brother Shu Yi, you are really lucky. Bai Dao said with a smile, looking familiar. If you were a second later, it would be miserable. How miserable? Shu Yi looked curious. Could it be possible that if we were a second too late, what would happen? It seems you haven't heard of it. Bai Dao raised his eyebrows and pointed at Lian Shou in the front. The one in front is the notorious devil instructor, Lian Shou. Devil instructor. Shu Yi showed an interested look. This kind of information was very important to him who was unprepared. Does this have anything to do with whether I am late or not? Could it be that if I came in a second late, I would have to do 1,000 push-ups? The consequences are much more serious than that. Bai Dao shook his head and smiled, and just as he was about to speak, a shout came from a distance. Report. A panting man ran from afar at a very fast speed and quickly came to the sign, holding his knees and gasping for air. Report. I was so excited yesterday that I didn't get up in the morning. He touched the back of his head and showed a slightly excited and embarrassed smile. Instructor, no matter how you punish me, I have nothing to say. Lian Shou looked at him with a smile, seemingly very kind, and took out his pocket watch and glanced at it. You are 1 minute and 10 seconds late. Sorry, instructor, I will never be late next time. The boy stood at attention and promised with a serious face. There are not so many next times in life. Lien Shou took back his pocket watch with a smile and looked at the boy. You can go home, classmate. Huh. The boy's expression froze on his face, as if he thought he heard wrongly. What did you say? I said you can go home now. Lien Shou's smile remained unchanged. No one could see his eyes clearly under the cover of his sunglasses. But today is the entrance test. The boy suddenly became anxious and his tone became urgent. The original excitement was gone. I thought people who could enter this academy would be smarter than their peers. Lien Shou's smile faded slightly and he looked at the boy calmly. Then let me make it clear. This classmate, your entrance test has ended. The result is unqualified. Please go home. Why? The boy's expression instantly darkened, unable to accept the fact. I have a dragon jade. I still have S-level abilities. Isn't it natural to join Longxia Academy? Am I going to be disqualified from admission just because I'm 1 minute late? I am the instructor here, and I am the person in charge of this entrance test. Lien Shou said calmly without changing his expression. His voice was not loud, but it carried an inexplicable majesty, which made the students present feel trembling in their hearts. Abide by time is the only standard here, and it is also the minimum standard. Anyone who doesn't keep time will have only 3 words in my heart. Unqualified. Does a person like you deserve to be an instructor? The boy became angry and shouted loudly. No one knew how excited he was after learning that he had obtained the Dragon Jade. How much he longed for this dream supreme university. As a result, he was disqualified just because he was 1 minute late. I want to see the principal. You don't deserve to cancel my admission. Anger filled his heart, and waves of energy surged from his body. You actually want to use your power on me? Lien Shou had a surprised and playful expression on his face, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. Almost at the next moment, the boy's body flew out like a cannonball and suddenly hit the ground. Of the more than 100 students present, only 3 people's eyes lit up and they noticed what had just happened. The 1.9-meter tall man grinned and stood there and looked at Lien Shou. A boy wearing a light blue coat, meticulous hair, and glasses, with a ray of white light reflected on the lenses. Shu Yi looked solemn and slightly shocked. Is this the ability? Lien Shou stood motionless. In everyone's eyes, he had not moved even a little bit, not even a finger. The sunglasses reflected a faint light in the sun, filling the air with pressure. I don't care if you go to the principal or whoever you go to. His voice was calm, but no one dared to look down upon this instructor. At least in the entrance test, including the subsequent entrance examination, my orders are absolute. Do you understand? His eyes under his sunglasses glanced at the 119 students present. Your first entrance test begins now. Domineering and powerful. At this moment, all the students had such comments about this devil instructor. Shu Yi finally understood what the serious consequences, Bai Dao said were. He was even a little lucky that he managed to squeeze in time and get here. If he were slower than half a second, he might end up like the unconscious student in the distance. This is the devil instructor. Bai Dao looked ahead nervously and whispered, according to my understanding. He has served as an instructor 3 times in the past years and was responsible for entrance tests and entrance examinations. And for every test he was responsible for, the number of people eliminated was more than half of the people who participated in the assessment. You must be careful, Shu Yi-san. Shu Yi's eyes flashed, and before he could respond, Lien Shou in front spoke angrily, your first entrance test begins now. After saying this, he looked at Kang Wei next to him, whispered in his ear, I remember that teacher Kang Wei, your ability is. After hearing Lien Shou's instructions, Kang Wei's expression gradually became weird. He widened his eyes, lowered his voice and looked at Lien Shou. Are you serious, Instructor Lien Shou? According to your requirements, at least dozens of these children must be screened out if they can pass this test. So what? Lien Shou replied nonchalantly, raising his chin slightly, how about it, can you do it? Of course you can, but your test, no matter how you look at it, it's all based on imagination. Kang Wei cursed Lien Shou's impromptu idea, but could only rub his eyebrows. Now he is a teaching assistant and can only listen to Lien Shou in everything. I don't care. When the time comes, these children will be eliminated and it has nothing to do with me. Kang Wei muttered in his heart and walked leisurely to the right. The students looked at the teaching assistant, who suddenly left with curiosity, and were a little confused when Lien Shou's voice came again. The first test I give you is climb mountains. As soon as this statement came out, the crowd suddenly became noisy and doubtful. Mountain climbing, where did the mountain come from? The testing ground they were in was a plain, with extremely flat surroundings. Not even a single building could be seen for several kilometers around. In order to get from the dormitory building in the morning, they walked for nearly half an hour. On this plain, where are the mountains to climb? Well, it should be almost done here. Kang Wei walked about 30 meters and finally stopped where he was, looked ahead, and muttered to himself. Teacher Kang Wei, please tell these children, where is the mountain? Lien Shou looked into the distance with a faint smile and called softly. All the students turned their heads and looked at Kang Wei, who was 30 meters away. Doesn't the so-called mountain have any special meaning? Could it be that he is referring to the awakened ones in the mountain realm? Kang Wei shrugged helplessly, raised his right foot slightly, and then kicked it on the ground. The mountain is right at your feet, isn't it? Boom! Just as he kicked the ground with his right foot, a roar suddenly came from deep in the plain. The next moment, the earth cracked, and amid a burst of exclamations, a towering mountain peak rose up from the depths of the ground. In the blink of an eye, it emerged from the ground and suddenly appeared. This mountain peak is about 200 meters high, with winding mountain roads and dense jungles covering it. The students stood there dumbfounded, looking up at the mountain that suddenly appeared, and swallowed nervously. They are not stupid, and they can judge almost instantly. The mountain peak in front of me was apparently created by that teacher Kang Wei using his power. Being able to create a mountain out of thin air, how terrifying must his strength be? It turns out to be a peak-level existence. Shu Yi clearly sensed a wave of energy lingering in the mountain peak. He looked at Kang Wei with slight surprise, and suddenly sighed in his heart. It is worthy of being the highest institution of learning, Longsha Academy. If you pick any teacher at random, they are all at the peak level. You must know that there are only one awakened person in the entire Dragon Kingdom who can step into the peak realm. They are extremely rare existences. I will now announce the rules for the first test. Lien Shou's voice brought everyone's shocked gaze back. He put his hands behind his back, stood quietly, and began to announce the rules. The test content is very simple. As long as you can climb to the top of the mountain within 30 minutes, you can complete the test. So simple. Dozens of students looked at him with astonishment and were a little surprised. Even ordinary people can climb a 200-meter high mountain in 30 minutes with a little training. And not only are they awakened, their physical quality will also be greatly improved under the operation of energy. It takes half an hour to climb to the top of the mountain, which is not too difficult at all. With a smile on his lips, Lien Shou continued to add, of course, besides time, there is a special rule. He slowly scanned everyone's face and whispered, there are only 80 people who can pass the first test this time. If after you climb to the top of the mountain, there are already 80 people there, then I'm sorry to say, but you won't be able to pass this first test. As soon as this statement came out, there was an uproar all around. The students who had felt relaxed before now felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy, with nervous expressions on their faces. In the first test, only 80 people could pass. This means that they need to compete with others. Otherwise, there is no point in climbing to the top of the mountain in 30 minutes but not as fast as others. The opportunity to join Longsha Academy is rare, and no one is willing to give up this hard-won opportunity. This is a bit bad. After Shu Zai heard these two rules, a drop of cold sweat suddenly dripped down his forehead. This test is entirely a test of physical strength and the use of one's own abilities. It is too disadvantageous for me. After he finished his battle with Congressman number 17, he was dragged to school by Ruan Rui. Except for sleeping in the car for a while at the beginning, I almost didn't sleep all night. A few hours ago, he was even competing with virtual beasts at an altitude of 4,000 meters. Whether it is physical strength or energy, he is in an extremely exhausted state. And now, he actually has to compete with more than 100 geniuses among his peers for physical strength. No matter which way you think about it, the probability that he can pass this test is extremely slim. Not only that, he also vaguely noticed something was wrong. I always feel that this test is not as simple as it sounds. If you want to pass the test, do you have to find another way? Shu Yi's eyes kept scanning every student, and his brain was thinking of methods rapidly. But Lian Shou didn't give the group of students in front of him any room to think. After describing the rules, he waved his hand and said with a big smile, "The first test begins now." Boom! Almost as soon as Lian Shou finished speaking, someone activated his ability and rushed out. Shu Yi's eyes flashed and he saw a student flying up out of thin air and flying rapidly forward. He was extremely fast, flying more than 10 meters towards the mountain peak in the blink of an eye. At the same time as he rushed out, the other students rushed forward as hard as they could. They seemed to have become students rushing to the cafeteria after class. Everyone was walking fast and eager to rush directly to the top of the mountain to complete the test. Shu Yi was not slow to react and quickly rushed out with the crowd. But when he turned around to look, Bai Dao, who was still beside him, had disappeared, and he didn't know where he was. Shaking his head and not paying attention, Shu Yi spread his energy evenly over his legs, blending in with the crowd and moving closer to the mountain, but his mind was still thinking about ways to break the situation. As expected of teacher Kang Wei, your mountain god ability is becoming more and more proficient. Lian Shou came to Kang Wei's side and looked at the groaning students in front of him with a faint smile on his lips. Kang Wei glanced at Lian Shou next to him with a vacant look. Compared to you, Instructor Lian Shou, I'm still far behind. Even if you want to defeat me now, you probably only need one move, right? Teacher Kang Wei is too humble. Lian Shou responded with a smile. Since I was injured, the improvement of my energy has long been stagnant, and my realm has even regressed. But you are still working hard to improve your strength over the years. There's no way I could knock you down with just one move. Oh, Kang Wei raised his eyebrows, a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. Instructor Lian Shou, do you really think so? Yes, if I want to defeat you now, I need at least 2 moves. Lian Shou sighed and shrugged helplessly. Quote. Kang Wei stood there with the corners of his mouth twitching, wishing he could slap himself twice. Why do you have to keep asking that question? He let out a long sigh, looked at the student not far away who was knocked unconscious by Lian Shou, and gently tapped the ground with his toes. Instructor Lian Shou, you really didn't act lightly. This is just a child. The ground shook for a while, and then a rock jumped out of the soil. But this rock has hands and feet, and the hands are made of piled rocks. From a distance, they seem to be covered with muscles. Although the little rock man was only the size of a palm, he came to the unconscious student and gently grabbed him. The student was easily carried on his head and headed straight towards the college's medical building. Its speed was very fast, but the student it held on top of its head was extremely smooth, without any bumps. He did not abide by the time and violated the rules. Lian Shou simply responded calmly. Not only that, he even wanted to unleash his power on me. Under the sunglasses, his eyes seemed to become very sharp, and even Kang Wei felt an awe-inspiring look. The abilities of the awakened ones are never directed at their own compatriots. Unpunctual, arrogant, playful in everything, without any respect or seriousness. If he is allowed to join Longxia Academy. Lian Shou paused and his voice gradually became colder, he will die. Kang Wei fell silent, but an inexplicable feeling surged in his heart. Perhaps Instructor Lian Shou is not really unkind. The reason why he is so strict may be that he just wants to reduce the casualties as much as possible to those children who do not have enough ability. For this former legend of the school, the original prejudice disappeared a little, an array of respect emerged inexplicably. During the conversation between the two of them for more than half a minute, the fastest ones had already approached the foot of the mountain and were ready to start climbing. The top one among them is the student who can fly out of thin air. There was a smile on his face, and he felt that this test was almost tailor-made for him, without any difficulty. I won the first place in this test. He swooped down to the foot of the mountain, adjusted his body slightly, and then rushed straight towards the top of the mountain like an arrow from a string. Climb mountains. Who would do such tiring things? Lian Shou took out a cigarette from nowhere, lit it leisurely, blew out a smoke ring, and had a panoramic view of the movements of the students not far away. It's almost time. Teacher Kang Wei, please start. Don't let it go secretly. I know. Kang Wei shook his head and smiled bitterly, then squatted down and pressed his right hand to the ground. A ray of green light quickly flew out from his palm, and instantly disappeared into the distant mountain peaks. Boom! A muffled sound brought an exclamation of surprise. I saw the student who had been flying straight up just now, falling from the sky like a kite with a broken string. When he reached the ground, he barely used his ability to stabilize his balance and staggered to the ground. He covered his bleeding nose and looked halfway up the mountain in disbelief. But he saw a huge fist, 1 meter thick, protruding from the mountain. Immediately afterwards, there was a buzzing sound from the mountain peak. A huge stone giant actually drilled out of the mountain. After he got out, the original mountain wall returned to its original state without any changes. The stone giant is about 3 meters tall, and its body seems to be made of countless rocks. It is filled with extremely explosive power and leaps from the mountainside to the ground. As it landed, the entire mountain trembled violently, shaking like an earthquake. Seeing someone falling from the sky, the people who were rushing the fastest also had their hearts skipping a beat and stopped. Hey, look up there! Among the crowd, someone shouted. Everyone looked up and their pupils tightened. I saw the ground trembling. In the ground around this mountain, several stone giants emerged one after another, each with extraordinary momentum, full of power and heaviness. At this moment, the students have rushed to different positions on the mountain peak according to their different speeds. The appearance of these stone giants happened to be evenly distributed all over the mountain, blocking all the roads going up the mountain. I see. Shu Yi was in the last group of people at the moment and had just stepped into the foot of the mountain. Looking at the huge stone giant in front of him, his expression changed slightly, and he finally understood where the uneasiness in his heart came from. These monsters are the real test of this first test. We have to avoid the pursuit of the stone giant, and we have to climb to the top of the mountain within half an hour, and we have to be within 80 people. Shu Yi's breathing accelerated slightly, and his eyes quickly became extremely calm. And my physical strength is not full at the moment, and my energy is exhausted. Are you going to find a way to break the situation under such harsh conditions? His eyes were sharp, and a curve could not help but raise from the corner of his mouth. What a hellish test. These stone giants all have the strength of the rock realm. Shu Yi observed the energy fluctuations on the stone giant and immediately came to this conclusion. From an energy perspective, every stone giant is comparable to the wolf that originally attacked the school. Are there 5 in total? Looking up, there were about 5 stone giants entrenched all over the mountain, guarding the road to the top. Boom! The stone giant closest to Shu Yi stepped on the ground with his right foot, breaking more than a dozen pieces of wood. He stared at the dozens of people at his feet and punched him directly. The expressions of the dozen or so people in front suddenly changed and they retreated. Energy surged from their bodies, and before they had time to release their abilities, they were thrown away by the stone giant and fell from the mountain. Thump! More than a dozen figures fell from the mountain and rolled down to the foot of the mountain. They rolled their eyes and passed out on the spot. Several of them had their chests and abdomen dropped, and their ribs were obviously broken by force, causing serious injuries. Hey, isn't it? Seeing this scene, many students' faces suddenly turned pale. They had never seen such a bloody scene. Isn't this an ordinary entrance test? Why is it so cruel? No matter how talented they are still just high school students who have just awakened. For a moment, several people's legs suddenly felt weak and they wanted to retreat. 13 people were eliminated. On the plain, Lien Shou sat on a chair made of stone, looking forward leisurely with a smile on his face. Kang Wei sat next to him, sighed softly, and the blue light flashed on his toes. Immediately, 13 little rock figures emerged from the soil and sent the unconscious students to the medical building. You asked me not to let go, but these children are just entering the stone realm for the first time. What if someone cannot resist the attack and their life is in danger? Don't worry, such a problem won't happen. Lien Shou responded calmly without changing his expression. They are all geniuses among their peers. Every piece of dragon jade they obtain is personally issued by the academy, and they are tested in combat. Even if they are only in the stone realm, they have just begun to use energy, and they will never be killed so easily. He pushed up his sunglasses and said with a half smile, "You have to have some confidence in these children, Teacher Kang Wei. Moreover, only in this high-pressure environment can we see whether these children are qualified to enter the battlefield. Kang Wei's mouth twitched, but he could only secretly complain in his heart. So as long as no one is killed, it doesn't matter no matter how serious the injury is. He glanced at Lian Shou and said, he is truly a devil. Should we unite and find a way to defeat this stone giant? Among the crowd, a girl spoke with a trembling voice and made a suggestion. Immediately, many people's eyes lit up and they spoke in response. Why don't we all work together to smash this stone giant into pieces first? We are thinking of a way. As soon as he finished speaking, the stone giant in front of him waved his palms and struck. The people who just proposed to cooperate no longer retreated, their energy surged, and they all released their abilities. A ball of fire exploded from the left side and shot toward the stone giant's face. But at the same time, a water dragon happened to rush towards him from the right. Two energies with completely opposite properties exploded in the air, immediately melted into each other, and quickly turned into a large amount of water vapor that dispersed in the air. Not only did it not cause any harm to the stone giant, the diffuse water vapor also blocked their sight. The two people who released these two abilities showed a look of astonishment and looked at each other from a distance. Before they could finish their words, the stone giant's fist had already smashed down hard. The strong shock wave knocked these people away, and they all rolled down to the ground. One of them, who was at the forefront of the shock wave, was instantly swept away, rolled down the mountain, and fainted. Another person was eliminated. How stupid! Shu Yi tried to move towards the mountain road along the side of the forest, while squinting at the students who were trying to unite. How can we cooperate when we are completely unfamiliar with each other's abilities? The nature and intensity of abilities, including the cooperation between people, cannot be understood and familiarized in just a few sentences. This is not a street fight. The more people there are, the more advantage you will have. If you fight in unfamiliar situations, there is a high probability that you will only restrain each other and contain each other. In this case, they will not be given time to exchange tactics and use abilities in conjunction. In other words, for this test, it is best to rely on yourself. He stared straight ahead, his eyes fixed between the stone giant's legs. Due to its huge size, it stands with its legs separated, and the gap in the middle is large enough to accommodate more than 10 people. There are many people who have the same idea as Shu Yi. On the road in the forest where he was, several people were approaching the stone giant together. Suddenly at this moment, Shu Yi noticed a figure approaching from the corner of his eye. That was the man who was at the forefront and could fly in the air. He had a conspicuous coxcomb head and was the first to be knocked down from the air by the stone giant. It's hard not to remember. He had just been knocked down and fell back to the foot of the mountain. He happened to be stopped by the first stone giant along with Shu Yi and the others. At this moment, his eyes were sharp. He was about 1 meter above the ground and flew forward quickly, trying to break through the stone giant's blockade alone. Oh, this guy is. The coxcomb head's speed surged, and it quickly rushed to the feet of the stone giant, and actually got out from under its crotch as Shu Yi thought. The stone giant had just finished punching forward and was about to retract his fist to launch the next attack. In the blink of an eye, the coxcomb head rushed to the crotch of the stone giant, with a happy face, success. But at this moment, a shadow suddenly covered his figure. When he looked up, his face was filled with shock and his soul was flying to the sky. I saw that the stone giant was aware of his presence. At this moment, he bent his legs and sat back, trying to block his progress. Its huge body was falling extremely fast at this moment. Judging from this speed, he would not have time to get out before he would be pinned down by the stone giant. Even if you don't die by then, your whole body will be broken. Oops, he tried to stop himself. It's too late to reverse now. At this critical moment, a hand suddenly stretched out from behind, grabbed his feet with force, and pulled him out. Boom! The ground trembled, and the stone giant sat on the ground, instantly shattering the ground and sinking into a deep pit. Before Coxcomb Head could react, his whole body rolled down and flew out, falling into the woods on the side. Only then did he realize that it was a black-haired boy who suddenly rescued him. Hey, brother, Shu Yi grinned and looked at the frightened rooster head. Do you want to cooperate? I have a way, maybe we can get through here. The stone giant's huge body stood up from the ground, and did not pursue Shuyi and the two. Instead, it launched an attack on several students who tried to break through the gap. Due to its huge size, it can cover several meters with every move it makes. For a time, no one could pass under it safely. Thank you for saving me. Cock-combed Head looked at Shuyi and said his thanks sincerely. He stood up from the ground and dusted himself off, but I've never been used to cooperating with others, so I'm sorry, I still plan to act on my own. Don't say that. Shuyi smiled slightly. Why don't you listen to my plan before it's too late? Believe me, the risk you need to bear is very low, and there is a high chance of getting through here. The coxcomb head paused in his forward steps, with a look of hesitation on his face. Half a second later, he stretched out his right hand towards Shuyi. Fuyi. He announced his name and then said quickly, you just saved me, so I can cooperate with you this time. If we can really get through this stone giant, we will go our separate ways, and we will each rely on our own abilities from now on. Of course, our cooperation is limited to the present. Shu also nodded. Tell me what your plan is. Fu Yi stood up and cautiously looked at the stone giant who kept waving his arms, wondering how he felt about it. Let me confirm first. Shu Yi looked at Ku Yi. Your ability should be to change your own gravity. Fu Yi turned his head suddenly, his eyes filled with shock. Why do you know? Every time he uses his ability, others will think it is similar to flying on flat ground. But Shu Yi, who was completely unfamiliar to him, was able to accurately describe the effect of his ability. Since you first wanted to rush to the top of the mountain, your flight path has been straight. Shu Yi shrugged and explained easily. If your ability is to fly, there is no need to do this. Just fly diagonally to the top of the mountain. In the face of the stone giant's attack, you can also change direction freely. But you didn't do that. You were almost attacked by the stone giant just now because you couldn't change direction. So I preliminarily deduced that your ability should be to create an effect similar to flying by changing the direction of your own gravity. Fu Yi was stunned for a moment while listening, and looked at Shu Yi with an expression as if he was looking at a monster. Since the beginning of the test, he had only used his ability twice. As a result, the effect of his ability was seen through so easily, and even the analysis was accurate. Sure enough, none of the guys who can take the Longxia Academy test are easy. A-level ability, Earth Center. Kui didn't hide anything and replied directly, it can reverse the direction of my own gravity. As well as briefly reversing the direction of gravity on objects I touch. But the only 6 directions it can twist are up, down, left, right, and front and back, so it can't move diagonally. In addition, because of the existence of inertia, I need to change in advance and accumulate kinetic energy every time before reversing direction. In an emergency like the one just now, I wouldn't have time to reverse direction. Very good, just as I thought. Shu also nodded, and after confirming that the analysis was correct, he continued, then listen carefully, my plan is. Someone has already broken through the 4 stone giants. Kang Wei looked at the mountain in front of him in surprise and exclaimed. As expected of a holder of SS-level abilities, he is indeed extraordinary. Lian Shou naturally paid attention to the movements of the students and nodded gently. According to this situation, he may be able to reach the top of the mountain first. At this time, there were already several students with extraordinary abilities, who successively passed through several stone giants and marched towards the top of the mountain. But most of the rest were trapped in front of the first 2 stone giants, unable to break through. In order to get past the stone giant, the students used various methods and all showed considerable strength. But the stone giants in the rock realm far surpassed them in terms of strength, speed and destructive power. Therefore, in just a short period of time, nearly 20 people were eliminated. I didn't expect someone to be so fierce. Kang Wei raised his eyebrows and noticed what happened to the second stone giant, and his expression changed involuntarily. He never expected that someone would choose to break through in this way. Oh, what does that kid want to do? Lian Shou suddenly showed curiosity and looked at the mountain with excitement. Kang Wei followed the sound, with a look of surprise on his face. Where is the first stone giant? Wait, that guy, is he crazy? The stone giant waved its arms and legs, constantly attacking the students who were trying to pass. Several students who tried to break through were once again forced back, panting and standing there, showing unwillingness. How can this guy be so strong? We can't even get through the first stone giant, what will we do next? What makes them anxious is not just the number of people who have cleared the level, but the most important thing is the time it takes to clear the level. Once the 30 minutes are up, the test will be terminated. If they can't make it to the top by then, they will be disqualified. Just when these students were anxious and unable to do anything, a figure suddenly jumped out from the left. He did not rush through the gap. Instead, he suddenly stood on the slope and shouted to the stone giant blocking the road, "Hey! Stupid thing." Everyone looked over in shock. Before they could hide away from this stone giant, someone actually dared to challenge it. Looking up, they realized that the person who was shouting at the stone giant at this moment was the student who fell from the sky with a stuck point. Shuyi stood on the slope and looked at the stone giant in front of him. He stretched out his index finger and said, "A stupid and stupid stone like you still wants to block our progress. What a fool's errand. This guy is really crazy." The students at the back widened their eyes and were extremely confused by Shuyi's behavior. At this distance, he will definitely be beaten away by the stone giant. Sure enough, the stone giant who was originally guarding one side turned to look at Shuyi as if he had intelligence. As if it had the ability to think, it suddenly waved its huge right fist and hit Shuyi's position. Great, now, looking at the enlarging fist, Shuyi's eyes flashed and he shouted. The next moment, he jumped directly from the slope, as if he was going to jump directly from the top of the mountain. The stone giant's punch missed, knocking down all the trees where Shuyi was standing before. Everyone looked at Shuyi who kept falling down the mountainside incomprehensibly. They didn't understand what he meant. Although he avoided the attack of the stone giant, his behavior was meaningless. But right now, another figure actually flew into the air from the other side of the stone giant at an extremely fast speed and shuttled past. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.